So a man is about to lose his job. He goes to his church and he looks up at the altar and he prays with all of his heart, "Please, God, let me win the lottery." He goes home, but unfortunately he doesn't win, and in fact he does lose his job. So he comes back the next week and again he prays, "Please, God, please, let me win the lottery. I'm about to lose my house." But again he has a bad week and he loses his house. Yet again he returns the next week and he prays, "Please, please, God, let me win the lottery. My spouse is going to leave me and take the children. Please, God, let me win the lottery." But alas, another week goes by, and now he's lost it all. His job, his house, his family. And when he comes to the church, instead of praying, he angrily shakes his fist at the altar and he says, "Why, God? Why didn't you let me win the lottery?" To his great surprise, a booming voice answers back, "Well, for heaven's sakes, buy a lottery ticket." This is one of my favorite jokes, because I think there's actually some wisdom in this joke. If you want something bad enough, you need to more than just wish for it. You've got to do something. In the Hadith, which is part of the Muslim holy texts, they put it this way. The difference between hope and mere wishful thinking is that mere wishful thinking involves laziness, wherein the person neither exerts himself nor strives to achieve what he or she wishes for. Hope, however, entails striving, exertion, and beautiful reliance. The first is like the one who wishes that the earth would plant and sow its own seeds for him. The second is the one who tills the soil, plants the seeds, and then hopes the crop will grow. That is why the wise ones are agreed that hope is not accurately hope, except if it is accompanied by action. Well, in other words, wishful thinking is sort of passive, and it assumes that something will happen in spite of you. Kind of like that "Wish Upon a Star." I love that song, but it takes more than just wishing. Hope is active. It creates possibilities and outcomes through or because of you. A hope or a dream is not guaranteed, but it is far more likely when we put energy toward it. That seems sort of almost like a law of physics. And experts will tell you that the chances of winning a lottery are extremely slim. But let me tell you, they're absolutely zero if you don't buy a lottery ticket. Hopes and dreams, they don't just happen miraculously. They need help. And we help them when we articulate what those hopes and dreams are, when we say them out loud, when we make them real. And we help them when we have a plan. We actually figure out what to do with that. Well, this congregation, it has a dream. And in fact, it has many. Probably as varied as each person sitting here in this room. In the last couple of months, we held a series of what we call cottage conversations, sort of small group discussions to discern what are all of our hopes and dreams for this congregation. And we got a lot of input. Figuring out a way to articulate all of those hopes and dreams into one vision, this was the responsibility of the Mission Statement Task Force. Now, mission statements, they're sort of statements of hope. They're kind of a collective dream. There's no guarantee they're going to happen. In the last 30 years, it seems that every organization sort of got onto that mission or vision bandwagon. Some of you maybe in your businesses have come across this, sort of popping up mission statements that had little or no meaning. They just kind of stuck them on the wall. But after about 20 or 30 years of doing this, people have figured out how to make them work. And those people that did, they became leaders in their industry. And here's sort of a summary of what we learned about mission statements. I can have the next slide. So the first thing is that a mission statement, it needs to be memorable. The shorter, the better. Now, the original mission statement of this church, which came up with a number of years ago, was actually about 2 paragraphs long, and nobody could actually remember it. Now, believe me, when I first joined an organization, I heard about mission statements and I started putting one together. Mine was actually an acronym that was a sentence, and every letter had actually, I sort of laugh about that now, but the idea was to try to figure out a way to try to capture everything, but that's not the purpose of a mission statement. The 3 phases that you see on the cover of your order of service, that is seeking truth, building just communities, and caring for one another, that actually came from our statement of purpose, and it was not really a mission statement. Now, the second thing that we've learned is in order to be effective, the mission statement needs to ask something of you. It can't be just something that's like, oh, isn't that nice over there? Those people over there do that. It needs to something that sort of makes you catch your breath and go, ooh, that's asking something of me. It's something that actually calls you to your best self. The third thing that we learned about mission statements is that it needs to be worked into the life of the organization and drive everything that it goes there. You can't just hang it on a wall. In other words, all of our bylaws, policies, goals, covenants, committees, boards, task forces, all of them should be working toward this one goal. That is the mission of the church. So it just can't hang on that wall. That's not what it's for. It's to be lived in order for it to be effective. The fourth thing that we learn that a mission statement needs is that it needs to address not just the people within the organization, but those that it serves outside of it. Now, there's so much good work that needs to be done here in Orange County. And just this week, I've been reading up in the local papers as I'm getting to know, just this community. And I have to admit, I was sort of shocked at what I found. For example, did you know that the city of Costa Mesa has absolutely no homeless shelters? A few churches and organizations offer food and showers, but that's about it. Just a few years ago, the mayor back then stated that he wanted to get rid of all services for the homeless because that would then get rid of all the homeless in the city. Sort of as if they were some sort of parasite that we get rid of by not leaving garbage out. This attitude, this lack of services resulted in 2 homeless people dying here in Costa Mesa last year when the temperatures went down to the 30s. It seems to me that while everyone now has access to affordable health care, what about access to basic things like food and shelter? I believe that there is so much work to be done here. This week, the city of Costa Mesa voted to build housing for the homeless. Now the question is this all talk, or will it actually happen? It sure makes them sound good after last year. And I believe that this city and this county need our voice to ensure that it actually happens. And that's just one example that I was reading in the paper. Here's another one. A woman in Irvine is getting harassed for putting a rainbow flag up on top of her house in support of gay marriage. This one's a personal favorite. A USC, University of Southern California, Trojan football player is getting blasted for honoring his heritage by using a mouth guard that had the Mexican flag on it. I find this very amusing since, of course, this is the Trojans, which honors the Greek heritage. And when it came out, they were fighting the Fighting Irish in Notre Dame, who honor their Irish heritage. But why do we get upset when it's the Mexican heritage that gets honored? In Fullerton, 2 police officers sworn to protect its citizens are on trial for beating to death a homeless man who was no threat to them. These are just a few examples that I pulled out of the newspaper this week. This community needs our voice of justice, compassion, and reason. This community needs a vision of what a different kind of world, one that we could build together. We need to make that happen. We need, as Langston Hughes said, we need to make America again, particularly for those for whom it never was. So the Mission Statement Task Force, after speaking with all of you, in conversations, we came up with a proposed new mission statement, a way to articulate this dream. The members of that task force, so just so you know, there's Randy Kokel, I don't think he's here, he's the Second Service, Catherine Martin, raise your hand, Bob Melville, Denny Melville, and myself. So we took all of what everybody came up together, we had sheets and sheets of paper, and looking at how do we put those all together. And at first we thought simply to make what we have on the cover of our order of service the mission statement. After all, it does kind of state what we do. It's a pretty nice one. It certainly was memorable, and it did describe what we do. We spoke in terms of our hopes and values. But what it didn't do for us, at any rate, was it didn't make us catch our breath. It didn't make us go, ooh. So we decided we might try for a different one. And we came up with one. And a couple things you need to know about mission statements before we unveil this to you. First of all, there's no such thing as a perfect mission statement. Now, one statement might sing to some or might fall flat to others, but the goal isn't to find the absolutely perfect words, the perfect phrase that meets everyone's needs or expectations, because that would be impossible because, particularly for Unitarian Universalists, in all of our opinions. The goal is to find a mission statement that speaks to who we want to be in the world. Actually, I think you can have the next slide. This is our mission statement. Orange Coast Unitarian Universalist Church, transforming ourselves and the world through the power of community. Let that sink in for just a minute. I'd like everybody to actually say this out loud with me. Orange Coast Unitarian Universalist Church, transforming ourselves and the world through the power of community. Now, this mission statement is not guaranteed. You all will vote on this, whether or not you like it, a yes or a no vote, on January 11th at our congregational meeting. So until then, we kind of invite you all to sit with this. We'll need an 85% yes vote, we decided, in order to go forward, because we want people, the majority of people, to like it and get behind it. If you don't like it, we'll go back to the drawing board and try again. There won't be any wordsmithing. If you imagine 100 UUs in the room trying to wordsmith this. Well, let me give you a little history about this statement. We looked at the verbs that we use now, the seeking, building, caring, and we thought that transforming captured all of that. We specifically wanted ourselves in there because we know that in order to change the world, we need to change ourselves to grow and learn. And the phrase, the power of community, this was something that somebody came up with actually on one of those sheets of paper where we wrote down everything. It asks something of us. It asks us to be our best selves, to come together. It is through community, when everybody comes together united in a common cause and spirit, that we can change the world. And actually, this phrase is one that is particular to our Unitarian Universalist tradition. As a matter of fact, we have a Unitarian theologian, believe it or not, named James Luther Adams. He's wonderful. And he believes that power of community, that something happens, something magical happens, mystical, when people come together united in a common cause or spirit. It is his definition of God. So how does something like this happen? This transforming of ourselves and the world through the power of community. We kind of deliberately left that open. What do we want to transform about ourselves and the world? Well, that's the next step. If we accept this as the articulation of our vision and our mission, then the next step is to have a plan. And to have a plan, you need to have goals. I'm not talking about small goals. I'm talking about big goals. Goals that make you want to get up in the morning, goals that make you want to build something. This is what I call, or what are being known now as hard goals. Hard goals are heartfelt, animated, required, and difficult. This guy named Mark Murphy came up with this. Much better than SMART goals. You guys know about SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, something. They're so uninspiring. Hard goals, though, make you, they ask something of you. It has to be something that you feel it deeply. It's heartfelt. It has to sing to your soul. It gets you excited. Animated goals. It has to be something you can visualize. You can see it. You know what it's going to look like. You have to visualize it deep into your bones. And it's required. It has to be something that's desperately needed. Something that you can't ignore. And it does need to be difficult. Langston Hughes said once, "Nothing worth doing is ever finished in our lifetime. A goal worth having is not all light and rainbows. It's hard work. And it feels so good when you accomplish it." And hard goals are not just for organizations, they're for each of us in our lives, to help us to learn to think big. I'm sure that each of you have faced a goal like this in your life. Mine, the most recent one that I can think of, was my call to ministry. This happened in my late 30s. I faced a goal like this. It was a very hard goal. If I was going to have to jump through all the hoops needed to become a Unitarian Universalist minister, I knew I need to come up with approximately about $100,000 to $150,000 over 4 to 5 years. And this was after I'd already sold my house and used up all my savings. I was starting from nothing. But for me, it wasn't about the money, it was about the ministry, the goal. My call to ministry was heartfelt. It was my heart's desire. It was animated. I could see myself doing it. I would get up and preach in my home congregation. I loved it. It was required. because to do otherwise was to deny who I was. And it was incredibly difficult. I mean, how am I going to get $150,000 over the next 4 years? I thought to myself, oh my goodness. And I didn't know exactly how it was going to happen, but I trusted that it would happen. I broke my goal down into bite-sized pieces. Okay, so first apply to seminary. Just make sure you can get into seminary. Apply for aspirant status with the Unitarian Universalist Association. Start saving. Get a roommate for a while. I told my friends and family. I started articulating what I wanted to do. And one friend, in order to support me, invited me to live in her apartment really cheaply while she was gone for a year. So friends help out. At first I thought I'd go part-time to school and then I would work full-time. That way I wouldn't have to take out very many loans or anything at all. But that was too much. I started actually almost having a nervous breakdown. It became too much. So after a year I started applying for part-time jobs at the seminary since I knew that they would pay for my tuition if I was on staff. And it took me about a year to find one, but I did eventually. And that still wasn't enough. So after swearing to myself that I never get another loan again, credit card, be in debt ever again, I had to let go of that bias. And I applied for student loans on top of the scholarships and grants. And that was one of the toughest decisions for me. But my dream was tougher than that. And each step of the way, I figured out how to make it happen. I had to let go of some of my deepest desires. I had to embrace new ways of doing things. During those years, I went through death of friends, major surgery, my mother getting cancer, financial insecurity, moving 3 times, and having 2 different jobs. It took me 6 years to get through a 4-year seminary. It was very difficult. There were times when I felt lonely, times when I felt lost. But eventually, as Dr. Seuss tells us, I moved that mountain. And I stand before you today because I believed in that goal, and it was worth it. This church, we've accomplished a hard goal before I got here. When you moved here to this place, it was heartfelt. You knew you had to find another home in order to continue this beloved community. And you wanted something more. You wanted to be something more in this community. It was animated. You could see it. You could visualize it when you came here. You saw to get rid of the big mountain of stuff that was in the middle of the courtyard there and what you would do in the meantime here. It was required. You're going to lose everything at the old place, all the parking. And it was difficult. People had to work long hours, come in here, painting and putting up drywall and all sorts of things. You all have been through so much. And here's the thing, you're not done yet. In fact, we're just beginning. So how are we going to transform ourselves and the world through the power of community? What hard goals should we have? What if our goal was to end involuntary homelessness in Costa Mesa or Orange County? What if it was to become a center for peace and justice in Costa Mesa? What about a goal for being a voice for liberal religion in Orange County? What if we were to create the most radically welcoming religious community in Orange County? How might we need to change to make that happen? Those are just some ideas. Our congregation, we're at a crossroads. We face some big financial challenges, but now is not the time to play small. Now is the time to think big, to reach inside ourselves and find that passion, the reason we became Unitarian Universalists. Now is the time to dream and make those dreams happen. We can remain as we are. We're a lovely community, seriously good people with good hearts who love one another. Or we can become more. We can become a force for justice, compassion, and hope in this community. We're going to decide where to put our collective energy over the next 6 months. We're going to need your voice on that. I personally like big dreams, and I want us to dream big. But it isn't up to me. It's going to be up to you. I can't do this alone. And remember that you are not alone. I am not alone. You don't have to know the second law of thermodynamics in order to serve this community. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. The one question you need to ask yourself is this: what are you willing to do to make our dream come true? because anything less is mere wishful thinking. So let us transform ourselves and the world through the power of community. May it be so, and amen.